Hello, vintage stereo restorers. This is part 6, the actual part 6 of the Kenwood KA-2000. And today it's just something actually really simple. The power supply is so important, I just wanted to go into just a couple little finer points on it. So I've replaced, I guess I could just roll this down to show you. I was lucky enough to find caps that would fit in the clamps. Other times I've stuffed the original caps, pulled out the goo inside and put a smaller cap in, and the newer caps are smaller. So the 2200 is replaced with the 3300. Moved a couple of resistors over here to get them out of the way. I like to keep the heat away from the caps. And then this 1000 microfarads here, and then the 250 there. And so that all fit in nicely, and I haven't tried it yet, but I wanted to do one more thing. These diodes that I spoke of before, the snubber, the diode with the capacitor snubber, well, this is actually where you get to do a little bit of electronic fabrication like they used to do in the old days with radios. The first time I ever heard this term, making a gimmick, had to do with a Philco radio service manual from the 40s. And it was a capacitor and inductor and soldered together, basically. And basically it's an old radio term for taking two parts and bringing them together. And the reason you do this, to save space and when you have very few connection points. So what I find, here's one thing, you get these tabs, like this is like right out of the 1920s. Well, the 1932 radio I just finished had terminal strips of this type. So this is a carryover from the old point-to-point era. And I find once you have more than 3 or 4 wires or parts connected to a tab, the chance of there being a poor connection really goes up. To get the solder flow in there, you have to be very careful. And so what they did is, they would put stuff together like this, so that you had one lead as the connection point. Now basically what I've done, hope you can see this okay, wrap the diode onto the leads of the cap, and you can go either way. How do I figure out which way to do it? Whichever one has the longest leads coming off of it. Make sure it's nice and flat. Then put it on something that won't burn, like my grandma's kitchen table. This is my grandmother's kitchen table from their house from the 50s. And then you just, where you've wrapped it, just fill it in with a bit of solder. You don't want to go too crazy hot on this. Use a 25 watt iron. And then to make it look nice, you need a little bit of the old tubing in a Ziploc bag. Just find something that will, of a size that will cover that up nicely. Something like that. Measure it out. A lot of the Japanese stuff carried on the tradition of having little gimmick. Now that I've told you about it, you'll notice it in all different brands. Yamaha did this on early ones, Sensui did it. Especially their early production stuff that was tubes. Have you ever seen the underside of like a Pioneer SX34 tube receiver? How many connection points there are? And yet it was a great receiver. So I'm just shrinking the shrink wrap on. Like that. Try not to shrink wrap my finger. So what's going to happen here is we're going to make sure we have the polarity correct. The band is on this side. So these two leads here are from the transformer, they're AC through the diode. So it will go on here. One lead will go on here. So instead of trying to force 2 leads on there, You're only putting, and on this connection here is somewhat critical. It goes through like that. Okay. Wrap it on like that. So you get something like that. Then you can bend it and position it. And one thing I noticed, this here is the input from the tone control board. If the diode and cap are too close to it, you'll hear 120 hertz bass hum in the background. So try to keep them on this side. And I still have my piece of tape here. See all the debris that would have fallen in the transformer? And to do on these, some people clamp their diodes. These IN 4007s, they are like, they can take a 20-watt soldering iron, soldering the lead, no problem. And so you just go, so we do that one, then we'll make another one for the next one. So both leads the transformer to that connection point, which goes to the collectors of the transistor. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Go and make yourself a gimmick. Thanks for watching and listening.